Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Cruising with the Coaches, a conversation with Julie and Lee. Um, like where does time go?
I
Right?
know, right?
We're in November. At the time of we're us doing this episode, the election hasn't happened yet.
Mhm. The
There's that,
anticipation.
but man, it's NFL is in full swing, NBA is back around, okay, baseball's over, so yeah, people are busy. People are busy,
Yes,
you
very
know.
much so.
And I like the sweatshirt. I
Oh,
know,
thank you. You
that's
like
yeah.
that?
I mean, national champion. They
A few
have
times,
been.
a
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
times, a
yeah.
couple times.
Like six, something like that. So
Something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Always happy to co-host with you. Everything good? How you doing?
Good. Doing great. Doing great.
Good, good, good. Well, I'm not going to bore folks because I don't have any updates with my brushes or loofahs. I haven't got a brush yet, so that's
Good.
fine.
Yay.
Because I know skincare is on the top. No, I know my skincare is on the top of everybody's list of wanting to know. I know that, so I won't bore people. I won't bore people. Um, but the topic that we're going to talk about today is it's pretty interesting. So when you sent it to me, we're I know you read it and I'm reading through it.
And it
It's
wasn't I wasn't targeting you, just so we're clear. Okay. No.
no, I'm kidding.
Honestly, no, it was like I said,
No,
it's just something that I also recognized in myself. So I was just kind of like, oh,
absolutely.
let's have some dialogue and be honest about what that really means.
100%, because what we're talking about is avoidance behaviors, right? And it was interesting to see, like, where my own avoidance behaviors are,
Mhm.
and really dive into it. So without further ado, let's talk about avoidance behaviors, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So, PhD or psychology, clinical psychologist, man, can't even say that. Michael G. Wetter says, in the most basic of terms, the function of avoidance is to protect us from what we perceive to be a threat. The degree to which we avoid is directly linked and associated with the level of perceived threat or danger. So sometimes those fears are based on experiences such as I was bit by a dog, so now I'm afraid to approach dogs. Other times it is simply cognitive. You're imagining it, right? You're thinking it.
Mhm.
I imagine being bit by a dog would be horrible, would be awful, so I will avoid dogs. All right.
Right.
And so this notion of what is threatening is relative. But by determining your specific avoidance behaviors, you can address them. So before we address any behaviors, right? I'll give it to the floor to you first.
Sure.
After now having discussed what avoidance is, and to be fair, like we all do it to a
Right.
degree, we all
Right.
do it. But how have you seen it kind of play out in your life, whether it's you know early on, at whatever stages? Has it been have you seen it at different stages in your life?
Um, I could say probably as a child because of everything that my mom like we cleaned the house. We had to, you had to do certain things before you were able to do other things. Okay. Bef- Before you could do what you wanted, you had to do what you had to do, kind of a thing.
Okay.
And so, like I traditionally do that. I realize that like I have to do the things that I quote unquote have to do
Sure.
before I can feel relaxed in trying to do anything that I want to do. And it's just kind of like,
Oh,
oh, okay, like why do I do that? And it's
sure.
just like for like the kids laugh at me like before we go on vacation. And now I realize like wow, that's my way of not wanting to make sure that everything's going to be okay because
Mhm.
if my house is clean, that
Mhm.
will completely have everything to do with whether the plane goes down or not.
Well, I was gonna not go that extreme,
Oh
but I was
no, I
gonna
have
say,
to go that extreme. We're gonna have a good trip based on the fact of all the things that I get done before we go on this trip.
well, see, that's where I was going with it, right? Like it's going to be an enjoyable vacation. The cleaner the house is. If the house is not clean, vacation is going
Yeah.
to be awful. It's going to suck.
No, no, mine
But
mine is extreme in
but
like
hey, the plane
we're
might
gonna be
crash if
safe.
the dishes are dirty. You know.
And the kids, they laugh at me, but
Mhm.
I'm afraid that I'm conditioning them to do the same because the fact of the matter is they appreciate a house being
Right.
cleaned when we get home. So
Well,
I'm like,
well,
oh my
see,
gosh,
so
like, oh
I
crap,
was
what am I gonna do to them that they're gonna
no,
be the
that's
same
not
way with your
conditioning.
family? It's like I'm like, oh no, like how do I change that? So
No, no. I'm with that, and I can appreciate that because the last trip that we went to that wedding a couple months ago. The doing the dishes. Oh,
sorry, this was the best place to do it today.
I heard the door. I was like, I was making sure. Is that me? Is that
No, that was me. Sorry. So
nah?
you were
Okay,
saying
I can start with the wedding.
yes.
All right, in three, two, one. So like we went to the wedding, a couple months ago, right? And before we left, they didn't clean the house, right? It was as clean as it's gonna be.
Right.
But like loaded the dishes, did the dishes, and I'm like, come back and like, oh, clean kitchen, right? Like
Right.
there's something to be said for that because and I'll tell you what it actually made me do, although I think I've done this on the last two trips now. Come back and unpacked like immediately. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah,
And
because you have
so
less to do when you get back. And that's how I like it.
exactly.
Don't let there be a washer and dryer in the hotel because I will clean all of our laundry before we even come home. Like,
Mm,
yes,
mm,
yes. The
mm.
less I have to do when we get back, they know I'm going to be just the happiest camper.
Well, I'm gonna find an 800 number for you. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, see, and I even did that. So unpacking, I even did the laundry. We got back that morning. I did the that evening. I did the laundry the next morning before I went to work.
Okay.
Like had to do it. Had to get it done. But there's something to be said for having nothing to do when you come home.
Correct.
There
Correct.
is something to be said for that.
Yes.
Um, I'll tell you, like going through the different and folks, we will get to the different types of avoidance behaviors. Um, but what I noticed is that for me, my avoidance behaviors have been mainly brought on by the grief that I've experienced at different stages, right? And what's even more interesting is that so it's one particular behavior, but for sure, but I have well, I was going to say expressed it, but I have done that behavior in different ways.
Okay.
So that's what was interesting to me because you know um I would say early as a young man, although I'm still young, but as a young man, the avoidance behavior I had was deal with substances, right?
Okay.
So there
Gotcha.
was there was that part to distract.
Okay.
But then as a younger old man or older young man, however you say that.
A wiser
Um,
young man.
no, I'm just wise now. So I'm not old, I'm not young, I'm just wise.
You're just wise.
Yeah. I think, right? Y'all can write in, tell me I'm wise. But so it was no longer the substances,
Okay.
but I think it became people, right? So with people that I lost, how do I substitute people who are living for those who I lost, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
And it didn't. I noticed it. I noticed it when my sister died, right?
Okay.
And I was like, huh, who do I like turn to? Who do I? and it was just weird because I was like, oh wait, but I can't replace her. No one's gonna be that. There are
Right.
people that, I'm close enough to be sisters, but they're not my sister. And
Right.
so I really started recognizing it then, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, it was interesting going through that. Um, but I like also let's just normalize that we're not trying to tell people that don't avoid things.
Right. Right.
We're not saying
Well,
that.
so I will tell you when I start to get the heaviest into my rituals, like whether it's
Mhm,
coming home cleaning or coming home cutting the grass, like doing these three particular things on da, I start to
mhm,
realize, ooh, let me sit down and
mm,
think about this because something's bothering me. Something is making me want to keep doing these things to
mhm.
avoid something. And then
Sure.
after I start thinking about it, then I realize like it might be the time of year or, like same thing.
Mhm,
Like I've had a brother who passed away too. And
mhm.
so it's just kind of like, oh, this is why this is happening. And then, with
Exactly.
the father of my children passing away, same. And it's it's all in February. That's what is like all of it's February. And it's just like,
Yeah.
why? Why? Like his birthday's in February, but he didn't pass until June. But then
Mhm.
Jay passed away
But
in
but the
February.
February reminds you, like, that month comes around, and it's like and
It's
I'm with
hard.
you. It
It's
was
hard.
for the longest time, it was the last quarter of the year for me.
Okay.
So it was, well, now September was kinda but September, October, November, December, and it was all on the 2nd of the month, and you're like, "Is there something wrong with the 2nd of the month of each month?" Like,
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
I'll even share this too. This, I mean, I can laugh at it now, and I think it's funny. Um, in therapy at one point, I was talking to the therapist, and this was when I was in my 20s still.
Okay.
And I was like, I hate Mondays. And he was like, why? Because I was like, because everybody dies on a Monday. Now, come on. I mean,
I,
that's, that was that was my experience, that it just happened to be
oh,
the
Monday.
Mondays. And
Correct.
so I could not, like, I could not go to class. I could not do anything on Mondays, right?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
avoiding Mondays.
Yes.
But I mean, that's why I laugh now. And folks, I'm not laughing at anyone who struggles with this. I'm laughing at myself because saying it now and after having been through therapy and getting wiser about how to address what bothers me,
Hmm.
that cracked me up when I'm like, really? I hate
Yeah.
Mondays because people die every day of the week.
Right.
It's
But
not just Monday, but yeah,
what you are
yeah.
saying completely resonates with me because that is when we let him go was on a Monday. And
It's
so, like, I dread Mondays. And so, like, I
Mhm,
know I'm not going to be
mhm,
myself, like, for the most, which is horrible. It's like every Monday, like, are you serious? But it's
right.
like recognizing that and knowing, like, okay,
Mhm,
I can do better if I schedule things in the afternoon rather than in the morning because I can prepare myself for it or what have you. But I mean, I will say
mhm.
it's gotten better over time, but
Sure.
like it took a minute for it to be okay. It was just kind of like, everybody dreaded Mondays, but I was like, oh no, I got a different kind of dread for Monday.
Right, right. It's not just gotta return to work, right? Well, and it's also, it's very much like we talked about last, one of the last couple episodes, the pendulum swing, right?
Correct. Correct.
Like, if and we talked about, like, the other shoe dropping,
Hmm.
and the pendulum swings one way, and it's great, and things are going well, and you're like, "But but," and this pendulum's coming back the other
Hmm.
way.
Right.
So, the more you recognize it, the more you can prepare for it, the more you can do what you need to do while the pendulum is here,
Right. Right.
knowing it then swings back again, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Like, that was, man, I wrapped up the that nicely with the other episode.
You
But
sure
yeah, but like, that's what we're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
And
But like
so
I said, it's the preparing too. It's just so
Mhm,
important because that I know for Saturday and Sunday, I won't let my exercise lax. When I had in the before, I'd
Sure.
get so stressed out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
can't sleep. What's wrong? Blah, 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 blah. Next
Then
thing
you're
I
going to the
know,
gym at 3 in the morning on Monday.
yeah. And then next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm like, I ain't going to the gym. Like, I don't want to do
Right.
that. So
Right.
then now it's 3 days.
Avoiding everything on a Monday. Well,
Exactly.
I can only imagine too, and I know we're going to talk about this when we talk about the different types of avoidance.
Hmm.
But this time of year, holidays, this is what people do with food, right?
Right.
They they might be somewhere, and the food, it distracts from
Mhm.
them not wanting to be there, right?
Right.
So they over indulge in the food, but then that becomes that cycle where they're like, okay, now I overate, now I'm the worst, I'm this, I'm that, and then they
Right.
get in their head. But they've got, then they got a work party, then they got like several family parties, then they've got all this stuff that they don't want, or there's things going on they haven't addressed,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
But they use the food to distract while they go to these things that they don't really want to go to.
Right.
You
And
know.
you're eating when you're not even hungry at that point.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's where I have walking meetings now. So like hey, you want to go for a walk? Yeah, we could talk. Granted, we're not taking
Hmm.
notes or anything, but it's kind of
Right.
like it's easier to be active while having a meeting rather than sitting there somewhere having lunch and
Right.
eating and just feeling gross afterwards because.
Because you consumed way too much
Exactly
because you didn't address what you really
the
needed
issue.
to address. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
We've done that. And you know who else hates Mondays? Garfield. No, I'm kidding. but
Yeah,
but
I
no, no,
forgot about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we don't identify as cats, so it's cool. We don't.
Right.
But no, folks. So why don't we take a break here? We'll let everybody kind of think about how they've avoided things or where that might be showing up in their lives. And when we come back from the break, we'll talk about the 5 types of avoidance behaviors. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after the break. Hey, folks, welcome back from that break. This is another episode of Cruising with the Coaches, conversation with Julian Lee. We have spent the first segment talking about avoidance behaviors and how that's shown up in our lives personally, kind of gave you a definition of we all do it, right? We avoid things because sometimes it just sucks and we don't want to deal with them, right?
Right. It's easier.
That's, yeah, of course. No one wants to go through something again, especially if
Right.
it sucks.
Right.
But let's go ahead and identify there's 5 types of avoidance behaviors, and then we'll talk about, you want to talk about them as we go,
Sure.
or
Yeah, let's do
okay.
it as we go.
All right, cool. So this comes from a book written by Dr. Matthew McKay. The book is called Mind and Emotions. Excuse me, a universal treatment for emotional disorders. Now, I want to say before we talk about this, we are not diagnosing anyone.
Right.
This is no, we are not diagnosing you, but this can help give some insight as to why you might avoid things. So the first one is situational avoidance. This is the most common type of avoidance, says Dr. McKay. Situational avoidance refers to staying away from people, places, things, or activities that feel activating or triggering to you. This is a formal symptom of post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. And so, like a lot of veterans will avoid being outside during a holiday or like around the 4th of July. They'll avoid fireworks displays because that kind of reminds them of shooting or being in a crowded public place. Um, this also looks like this for people without PTSD. If you get activated or triggered by being in a crowded elevator, making eye contact with new people, or if there's wildlife areas with snakes. So let's come back out on camera here. Um, so that was the last part with snakes. That was very specific.
Yeah.
That was,
Because
I was like,
usually that's
because
what it is. It's snakes. Snakes are like the one thing that people are just completely petrified of.
fair. I mean, people aren't afraid of bears or mountain lions, or
But like
but not
I would
like snakes.
say,
Yeah,
yeah, like I would say most people are afraid of bears. Like some people could care less about a snake. Like if a snake rolls by, you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. If I'm minding my
that's why
business, cool.
yeah, that was super specific, but
It was. It was.
yeah, that is the most common one. Like you avoid things, right? You don't
Right.
go to. So we kind of talked about that in the first segment, right? If
Right.
people are avoiding, or if they go to the party, okay, they didn't avoid it, but now they've distracted themselves another way with the food.
Correct.
Or how you and I both talked about we hated Mondays, right?
Mhm.
So we tried to avoid at all costs doing anything on a Monday, you know?
Right. Right.
Um,
You
yeah,
can't keep
that's
it from
the
coming. It's coming.
well, if you take the calendar and you peel off that one column with Mondays, does that mean it doesn't exist?
No, it
Does
doesn't
it?
work that way.
No, you can't like cut it out, have Sunday here, nothing,
No,
Tuesday,
I'm
Wednesday,
sorry.
doesn't
I'm
no.
sorry. No, Sunday, Sunday.
I tried, alternative.
Yes, yes.
All right, back to the next one. Um, so the second one is cognitive avoidance. And this type of avoidance is, as Dr. McKay says, an inside job, meaning like it's in your brain.
Mhm.
So cognitive avoidance refers to actively turning your mind away from distressing thoughts or memories. This may include consciously telling yourself not to think about or don't think about those things. In some cases, this could also be chronic worrying or obsessive thoughts. You might even find yourself constantly preparing for the what ifs by going over and over and over certain details, plans, or scenarios in your head in hopes that it will shield you from the future disasters or disappointments. So, let's talk about that one for a minute. You know,
Okay.
I think I have used this behavior before, like in certain scenarios, being nervous, right? So you're going through all these scenarios in your head. I've actually done it with public speaking, right?
Okay.
Like, what if I sound like an idiot, or what if I don't really, Julie? That's what we're
I didn't
doing. No,
say
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
anything.
But or what if I can't come up with a topic? What if I get up there and I don't have a story? Like all these things that aren't true because y'all watch the show. I'm
You
I'm
got a
pretty
story.
talk. Yeah, I got a story, and I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to talk. So
Right. Right.
why would I even be going through those things? But
Right.
that's a part of the cognitive avoidance. Has cognitive avoidance ever shown up for you at all?
Yeah, that's the ritual one, isn't it? That's me.
No, no, that's the next one. That's the
Oh,
next
it's
one.
the next one. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Um,
This one is more
that's the
like
what
in
if
your
the
own head,
in
like
your
in
own
your own
head.
head about it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not really. Because like I usually
Mhm.
kind of go from, well, if I do this, like I immediately think of the consequence. I can probably thank my mother for that one. But yeah, like if I think about something and I'm like, oh, if I wanted to do this, yeah, no, if I did that, this will
This
happen.
is
So
right.
then I stop thinking
So,
about it, like
so
immediately.
you're not really avoiding it. You're just like you play it out, and you're like,
Yeah, no,
not worth it.
like my mom's
Yeah.
gonna come and put me in the corner, so it don't matter. It's not a plan. We're not doing that.
Well, she might ground you, so I don't know. Like
Exactly. So no, I always go to the consequence, and then it's just kind of like, okay, no, it's not worth it. Whatever. So
nice.
yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not a
All right.
whatever, I guess.
Well, the next one, number three, is protective avoidance. So
That's me.
protective avoidance, okay.
Yeah.
Protective avoidance refers to the actions in your physical environment that help you feel safer in your inner world. Compulsive cleaning, I think we talked about that.
Love that.
Or the rituals that enhance your sense of safety, keeping lucky charms or talismans. Um, and this hit home for me. Perfectionism and over preparation for classes or work can also be a form of protective avoidance. Conversely, you might try to avoid risk by procrastinating and putting off a feared task or event. So, as we come back out on camera here, I think we're diving deep into our individual lives here because I have definitely used this one as well, although this is not the one that shows up the most for me. I have used it with that perfectionism, over preparing, or the procrastinating. I
Mhm.
have definitely used that avoidance behavior for sure.
Yeah.
I've,
No,
I've,
I do
I've,
the same.
yeah,
Now, oh,
and
being way overly prepared, and you're just kind of like, I put all this information together for what purpose? But I mean, it is what
yeah,
it is.
yeah. Well, and mm, okay, got to tell it myself here a little bit. I think that's at my full time job. I try to prepare all my fellow colleagues, like to give the same information to make it as simple as possible for all of us, right? And so there's times when things change, and I will create a document that has all of these changes, what to put where, and it's very thorough, very detailed. And now that makes me think, hmm, is that protective avoidance or is that, as I call, professionalism? You know, that's what I'm going to call it. But
That's what you're gonna call it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's my story. That's my story. But it just made me think about that because I will tell you, actually had this conversation with my daughter. I'm a recovering perfectionist. That's it. I will always be fighting that battle of trying to be perfect. No
Mhm.
one's forcing me. No one's expecting me to be perfect. No one's telling me I have to be. Those are self inflicted things that I fight with all the time of not having to be perfect. It's hard being perfect, but I'm not. So, but yeah, that's I'm a recovering perfectionist. So that hit home for sure.
Yeah, because I can honestly say that I too, was I call it the white knuckling. You want to hold on to everything, and you just want to,
Oh,
it's just easier
yeah.
that way if you do it yourself because then you know it's done right, blah 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 blah. But like now, it's just kind of like, I'm gonna let it go. It's gonna be what it's gonna be, and
Mhm.
I'm all right with that. But it took a long time to get there, like a real
Yeah.
long time.
To let go of the perceived control.
Correct. Correct.
Ooh,
Yep.
I won't even talk about how I had to let go of that when I um, upgraded my website because
Okay.
I was the one doing all the work on it at first,
Okay.
and then I realized, okay, it got to a point where I had to outsource it and trust someone I didn't know to
That's
do
hard.
that.
That's
Oh,
hard.
I was like, and I mean, I know I was paying for a service, right? So I
Yeah.
know that, but yeah, I was like, that's not right. And I couldn't just go in and make the change. I had to go through my account manager, who is the best account manager, by the way, because she puts up with me.
Look
But
at look at you. There you go. Clean that up. Clean it up.
mm, mm, I know she's like, here's another email from Lee. Great.
Right?
Okay. Okay. No more therapy hour with Lee. Let's move on to the next avoidance tactic or avoidance behavior, sorry, is somatic avoidance. So somatic avoidance refers to like steering clear from situations that would elicit a physical response similar to anxiety or stress. So therefore, people who avoid these types of or avoid the types of somatic responses, they also tend to avoid activities or situations that trigger these responses, such as roller coasters, thrill rides, or uncertain situations. He goes on to say, Dr. McKay also says that these things could include avoiding exciting events, avoiding falling in love, feeling fatigued, like as in, a workout, sexual arousal, and or temperature changes. Um, so yeah, anything you want to add about the somatic behaviors? What do you think about the somatic ones?
I think that's a hard one, especially if you know somebody who is like that,
Hmm.
because your immediate response is you want to push them outside their box, right? You want them to quote unquote get over it, right?
Sure,
But
sure.
understanding that it's not that easy. It's not, like if you can, think about your own situation and how long it took you to grow out of whatever, then you
Hmm.
realize, yeah, no, I got to let this person do it at their
Kind
own
of do
pace. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and some of the things that hit me were thinking about even like the temperature change, right?
Hmm.
So there's someone who won't go to like on a Alaskan cruise or something because
Yeah.
that's a huge temperature change from being in the Midwest, or
Right.
someone who won't go to on a safari excursion or a Saharan desert excursion because the temperature, right? I was like, interesting. But plus that's also like an exciting event, right? But
Right.
they will avoid that because it will trigger a response.
Right.
So that was the fourth one, I believe. And
Yes.
so the last one is the substitution avoidance. So substitution avoidance can take the shape internally or externally. Internally, this looks like replacing certain feelings like sadness or grief, as I mentioned, with something that feels more acceptable like anger. Externally, it looks like relying on some sort of crutch to cope with the emotional pain, like alcohol, food, drugs, sex, or any of the above, or anything else that provides the temporary relief or respite from the uncomfortable emotions. Um, this is like it's cultivating this overall feeling of numbness can serve the same purpose. And people who turn to the excitement of gambling, right? Risky behavior, video games, internet porn. This all replaces these painful feelings that they want to avoid. So I I get that 100%. I get
Oh,
that. That's
fast. Yeah.
yeah. And you heard me talking about that before, right? Where
Yeah.
early on for me, it was the substance abuse. It was the drinking and, smoking and all those detrimental things, right? Um, but then later on, it shifted into trying to replace people with people. And I never even really thought about it until I stepped back and
Right.
was like, oh. I'm trying to like find this family because my family's not there.
Right.
Never even occurred to me until it. And folks, you have to go through grief. As I learned in therapy and working with a coach, you can't stop it. Like grief is going to come.
Right.
The best way that I can say that I've dealt with it and learned how to deal with it is it's like a wave, right? But instead of, and I've probably said this before on some other episode, but instead of trying to stop the wave, right? You're standing there and you're braced to stop the wave. If you actually go with the wave,
Lean
it
into it.
can absolutely, it can make it easier to deal with, and the waves can get smaller and smaller, you know? So
Right.
that's one way. I also did learn too that um I could not substitute anymore with substances, right? Like
Oh, of
that
course.
that
Yeah.
was detrimental physically. And I was like, man, I'm going to kill myself if I stay on this path.
Right.
So that was something that was hard to come to terms with and come to grips with too, you know?
Yeah.
Um, in any substitution avoidance, um,
I,
ever.
and I know mine sounds mine sounds so cheesy, but I recognize it, and it's just like, what the
Mhm.
hell? But like, if I'm literally eating pizza every day, like I'm realizing that's my
It's
comfort food. You know what I mean? So it's like
sure.
I'll get Romeo's one day, Giovanni's the next, and then I'll get Little Caesars. It come Thursday, I'm like,
You're like, this has been 4 days in a row. What am I doing?
yeah,
Yeah,
like what is
yeah,
wrong with me? So
yeah.
recognizing it is but yeah, no, I do know that when I mean, it's okay to eat occasionally, but I
Sure.
find if I'm doing it like every day, that it's like,
Mhm.
okay, usually by the third day, I'm like, wait a minute.
So, but yeah, let me take stock of what's going on now. This is purely joking. Did you really mean to use the word cheesy
Yeah,
with
I know
pizza?
that's I realized I said I'm like, oh no, and I'm sitting here talking about
I,
pizza, but yeah.
I couldn't let it go. Sorry, couldn't let it go. But no, and that's the thing. I'm glad we're talking about this because it looks different for everybody, right?
Oh yeah,
It
yeah,
it doesn't have to be some great big thing like you've heard me talk about grief. You were talking about pizza. Like it's different for everybody. But
right,
the
right,
goal is to recognize it and see where it's showing up so that you can take a step back and pause and say, okay, what and how do I need to address something? Right?
right, right.
So that's also what Dr. McKay talked about too, is like when to seek help. And both you and I have been open about we have sought out help as a therapist, and it like there's nothing wrong with that. Asking a
Mhm,
professional for help,
right,
but we all exhibit these avoidant tendencies from time to time. These tendencies should not rule our lives or deprive us of participating in experiences, activities, or moments that we would otherwise enjoy or be required to do. That's that office party that you got to go to. But it is appropriate if or if appropriate, I should say, uh, and it's recommended for you to seek professional help if these tendencies to avoid things, if it causes interruption, or I even say disruption, right, in your day-to-day life. That's when it's okay to seek help. In some cases, avoidance can be a way of life, right? You just don't like people, so you avoid people. But not only can it prevent personal growth, the satisfaction that comes with overcoming the fears, um, it helps with the quality of life. And over the long term, that's the goal. If your life is on hold, then it's not worth it. But the depth, the height that you reach of your existence of your life, it's limited day to day, week after week, year after year, if you keep avoiding these things. And, ultimately it's not a great way to actually live, you know?
Right.
Um, so yeah, and any last thoughts on avoidance behaviors that you'd like to share?
Not particularly on the behaviors, but on therapy. So, we both talked very openly about the fact that we have seen therapists and what have you.
Absolutely.
I just want to say to people, don't be afraid to walk away from a therapist that you feel is not doing better for you. I think we get stuck on, um, they're the therapist and they know better, or they should be coaching me or telling me to do what I should be doing, and blah 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 blah.
Mhm, mhm.
If after two visits it's not beneficial to you, you know that, and so you should feel free to walk away. There's no need to be polite with your therapist, I guess, is the best way I can say that, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
100%.
And then,
No,
mhm,
I agree with you 100%.
yeah,
Because this is such a personal thing,
correct.
you have to have a rapport with the
Correct.
therapist, but you also got to trust them.
Right.
And you nailed it. Like after two, maybe three times, you'll
Yeah.
know. You'll
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
And there's enough therapists out there. I do There's one good thing about the internet, but you can reach out to, there's so many different apps, there's different services that are available that are relatively inexpensive or free. But
Correct.
yeah, like there's nothing wrong with reaching. Let's normalize for the black and brown community
And I was
that.
just going to say that too. It's because,
Mhm,
first of all, we're not always going to find the therapist that is like us. Okay. So when you are sitting there and trying to explain culturally how you and your family talk to each other, or how you and your family interact, and
mhm.
the other person just cannot relate,
It's
it's so annoying because you're like, no,
so-
no,
sounds a
they
bit personal.
right, like they meant that with love, like trying to explain, like, this is how we talk to
Right,
each other, and it wasn't meant
right,
this blah 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 blah, where you're
right.
just trying to explain what happened or what have you, and they're just so appalled because it's like, oh my god, you're like, no 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 no, like that's not how I took that. It's because this
Mhm.
this and this, and like, I don't want to say
Yeah,
that's how we talk to each other, but yeah, that's how we talk to each other in my household, you
like you
know.
said, when you have to explain cultural
Yes,
differences,
it's
you're
so
like, wait,
hard.
who who's in therapy here? Me or the therapist?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I am
yeah,
not
yeah,
here
yeah.
to teach you. Like, ugh, like you want to get to the next step, and like the next thing you know, your time is gone, and you like
You're like,
halfway through
can,
the
can we
problem.
can we get to me? Can we get to me? Is that okay?
Exactly, exactly. So, like I said, it's
Yeah,
okay to walk away from it. It's okay to try a therapist if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, because that's
sure.
70% of the time that's going to be the case. But if
Mhm.
after, like you said, two or three visits, and
Yeah.
it's just spinning circle, like, just, it's okay to walk away and find a new
And
one.
and on that same line of thinking, if you're with a therapist for a while and you're starting to get to the heart of things and the work is about to start, don't walk away then.
Right.
Like, like
Not just because they're pissing you off.
I can't tell you how many people I do know who have gone to a therapist and they've
You know
gotten
what
right
she
to
said?
that. They get right to that spot where the breakthrough is about to happen,
Yes.
where they're
Yes.
about to uncover some things, and
Yes.
they're like, "Oh, I feel good, so I'm not going back."
Right. Or
No.
I liked him until he told me to blah 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 blah. Like, I'm not talking to my dad. Like
Right,
things like
right.
that. It's like, no, no, no.
You
It,
still got to do the work,
yes,
but
yes,
also you do know within a couple visits
yeah,
if that therapist is going to be right for you.
yeah. If there's rapport or not rapport, you're gonna know. And then once you
Mhm.
feel that, like, don't walk away just because you got an attitude.
Just because your feelings is hurt, that's
Right?
okay.
All in your feels.
Do the work. Do the work.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, y'all, this has been another episode of Cruising with the Coaches, conversation with Julie and Lee. Truly hope you came away with something that you can use with avoidance behaviors and if it's time to seek help or not. By the way, right there at the bottom, take a look at the link, go there, watch our episodes, like it, subscribe it, set your alerts so that you can get our new content when we let it release. Until next time, Lee and Julie signing off.
Good night.